My conversation today is with returning guest Alison Chicosky of Practical Occult and new friend of the podcast, Monte Plaisance. I was very happy to be able to sit down with these seasoned practitioners for a roundtable discussion on the modern practice of ancient magic. Our joint intention was to offer something of practical value to modern practitioners, old and new, via our own practices and insights. Both Monte and Alison working at the heights and in the depths of magical practice, our conversation was rich, insightful, informed, and pragmatic. I'm Ike Baker, and this is the Arcanum Podcast. Okay, awesome. I'm here again today. I've got Alison Chicosky and Monte Plaisance on the Arcanum Podcast, and we are going to talk about, well, practical magic, but also ancient magic. And at least I would say reconstructions of ancient magic in the modern day. So thank you guys for being on the podcast with me today. Alison, it's great to have you back. And Monte, we've worked together with the Hermopolis Symposium, but this is your first time on the pod. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's talk a little bit about what it is you guys do. Maybe, Alison, you've been on the podcast, but as I mentioned just a few minutes ago off camera, it was a long time ago. So maybe you can start us off and let us know exactly what kind of a background you're coming from magically, what paradigm you're working in, and then hand it over to Monte for the same.
Sure. Well, I definitely do Solomonic magic, which is more like later than the ancient by quite a lot. But I also work from the Greek magical papyri, which is contemporary with the New Testament. So that's pretty old. And I've been working a little bit with the coffin texts and the Coptic magical papyri as well lately. So definitely into looking at ancient works and seeing if they can be adapted for today's usage.
Awesome. How about you, Monte?
Original background was Golden Dawn and Wicca in the way back. That evolved over time into a more Hellenic background. I'm definitely a hard polytheistic Hellenist. The Greek magical papyri has been a focal point of mine since around 2000. In 2008, from 2008 to 2010, I went into what I call a monastic period, where I had acquired some property outside of Baton Rouge and went complete no contact, no electricity, living basically like a monk for 2 years, and worked through the Greek magical papyri and kind of incorporated it into my Hellenistic beliefs with a focus on the theurgical, the anagogic, the rising, and perfection of the soul, and communion with the personal daimon. So that's where I'm still at now. So
beautiful. Question for you. So you're working in this sort of Hellenic paradigm. And you mentioned how you're a pretty hardline polytheist. So do you subscribe to the monism or henotheism that a lot of that stuff, at least on the philosophical level, metaphysical level, resolves itself into, or are you just kind of more Proclean, where there's just the henads of the gods and they don't kind of all merge into a monad?
No, more in the Neoplatonic concept of the one. From the one comes the many, and return to the one. From my personal experiences during that monastic period, that became very prominent for me through the experiences that I had going through a lot of the rituals and the spells in the Greek magical papyri. and studying the philosophy behind it, trying to create a system that worked for me. And everything kind of went back to that concept, that emanationism from the one outward, and that the gods are, as we perceive them, are fragmentations of that one, kind of like, white light being broken into a prism into other colors, into infinite colors. So kind of encompasses, in a sense, even though I consider myself Hellenistic, understanding that all religions are valid based on that concept, that they're all different cultures, personal interpretation of that particular fragmentation of energy, I guess is the best way to put it.
Right. And it's only when we get really, really dogmatic about it that we turn into assholes.
Yeah. I try to avoid that.
I try to, man.
Yeah.
I try to.
So,
All right.
sometimes it's difficult.
It can be, for sure, especially when you care about this stuff and when you're working with things that you are subjectively experiencing as objectively real. It can be very, very difficult to be like, yeah, well, that's, you believe that. It can be kind of hard, know. But that's an interesting point. It might be easier for some people than for others. But today I wanted to kind of contrast this idea of theurgic magic as opposed to other forms, which let's say could be more considered more chthonic. Obviously we're going to want to talk a little bit about Goetia, and talk about what I find interesting too, Alison's approach to what she calls Heka, right? The Egyptian magic and that style of working with that material. So I'm interested to get some of your thoughts, both of you, on sort of a compare and contrast. Do we think that that the distinction is hard and fast? Because as we see, right, in a lot of our communities and forums, there seems to be this talk about, right, dogmatism. There seems to be this like hard line running down the center for some people, and it's like ne'er the twain shall meet, which I don't think, me personally, I don't think that is a healthy, effective, or really accurate way to look at the whole spectrum of things. But I'm wondering what you guys think about these distinctions. Alison, why don't you start us off?
So historically speaking, magic was completely, or Heka was completely intertwined with Egyptian religion. So there was no, this is magic, this is religion, this is medicine, because the people practicing medicine would have used herbs. They would have then used invocations. They would have made an amulet and been like, wear this to suppress your cough. It was just all one thing. So we have this modern separation between the two of them, but that didn't exist in ancient times.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to kind of get this across to people too when they're first coming to the material, which I think is actually the benefit of, as I know both of you do, leaning more on scholarly research and leaning more on primary sources, because you've got to get rid or at least sort of dissolve this perspective filter, this lens that we approach this material through when we first come to it, where we're sort of retrofitting the ancient worldview. We're trying to understand it, but by smashing it into our worldview, and it's not fitting. So really, what's really important is to kind of wrap your head around this worldview that really didn't have these distinctions whatsoever. As you mentioned, I think that's a really good point. What do you think about it, Monte?
I absolutely agree. I don't feel that there's a hard line between the two. The way that I usually explain it to students is to me, it's not necessarily a religion that practices magic, but religion in its most potent form. It's intertwined. It's one and the same, and it's about communing and understanding with the forces that are unseen. The things that go behind the physicality of life. And I think that as material beings, and like you said, especially people coming into it with the studies, it's one of the things that historically the Neoplatonists started doing towards the late Neoplatonism, and Iamblichus was one of the advocates against it, was the separation of the two. That religion and philosophy were two different things, and Iamblichus was like, no, they're not. They're the same. They're the same thing. And that traditional religion at that time wasn't contrary to logic, or it was not unreasonable, and that it had some sort of logic and reasoning to it, to the religion, if you just looked at it from the right perspective. Like you said, trying to get your mind crammed into that way of thinking. And it was Iamblichus's work on the mysteries that really kind of nailed that home for me, going deep into what he talked about and those things. So, yeah, but I absolutely agree. I don't think that there's a hard line between what is magic and what is religion, or what is theurgy and what isn't. And I had mentioned this to you, I think, in a chat that we were talking to you and Alison and I, where I said that I kind of view the Goetia and the aspects of the Greek magical papyri that focus on mundane things. Like there's things in there about, how to improve your health, how to get wealth, how to do things like that. I view that as magia or magic, but they're all part of the same thing. They use the same system, the same paradigm is involved, but one, the way that I describe it a lot, is one is vertical and one is horizontal. And the theurgic are the ones and the rituals that seek to elevate the individual, elevate the soul, whereas the practical ones tend to be more horizontal. They tend to be more like, I'm going to focus on what I need here in this plane of existence. So, but that's the only difference. They're basically the same, other than the result of what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, because if I kind of describe it, I give this sort of visual, image, this picture where it's like, okay, you take an ancient Goez and an ancient Theurgist, and you put them next to each other, side by side, in a big room. You say, go to your opposite corners and do your thing. For all intents and purposes, I think perhaps to everyone except those with a highly trained eye, they would appear to be doing the same thing. They would appear to, because there's only a certain amount of techniques, which is why I'm able, and you're able, and Alison's able to sort of reconstruct this stuff. It's not, it hasn't really changed that much, prayer, invocation, using, the intonation of either names or strings of vowels, etc., things like that. Certain materials, it's all kind of the same, but yeah, the intent is what, and that's a big thing in magic. That's a big thing, even in modern magic.
Yeah, I've broken that down. What you're saying, I say this a lot. There's four stages to it, and it starts with adoration, and then there's absorption, assimilation, and then apotheosis. And all four of those work for either theurgy or Goetia or magic, magia, whatever. That's the four cores. You start with a focus on something outside of yourself. You start with the adoration. With the theurgist, will, if they want to commune with Apollo or Helios or whoever, they'll surround themselves with things that are associated with that particular energy, that particular deity, to call that power in. As you call that power in through prayer, through meditation, through chanting, through all of the things that you're saying, the same technique, you get to absorption. The energy rises, you absorb it. After you've done that for a certain amount of time, that energy starts to change you. It has a shift in you. You start assimilating that energy. You become more like that energy, which with the theurgy aspect of it. And then over time, the more you get, the more you assimilate, the more you get to apotheosis, where you commune and become one with that particular energy. And eventually, the ultimate goal for me, at least, is to, reach that henosis instead of apotheosis to get that ultimate. But the techniques and the procedures are absolutely the same, and you can pick them out.
I'm interested too. That brings us to particularly apotheosis and enosis. I'm interested, Allison. You mentioned also in our chat that we had about the self-identifying with the deities. What part does that play in your practice?
Yeah. So I have talking points. So that's definitely a part of my practice, and it's historically coming from the Egyptian. So I've got, I'm quoting Frankfurter to say one could reinforce any spell or recitation in Egyptian religion by asserting that Thoth himself was pronouncing it. And we see it in the PGM, we see it in the coffin texts. It is definitely a thing that we see. So I believe that connection that I make before it is something that makes my practical magic stronger. So in many cases, I will do like a self-identification before another spell. So it's like I'll just string things along to make it more powerful.
So then you're speaking, you're speaking this stuff into existence under the authority and the auspices of the deity rather than the mundane self. Is that how you kind of wrap your head around it?
Right. And religiously speaking, this has to do with, we talked about the hidden God that is responsible for creating himself into millions. So, we have that, and then we have him creating the sun and the moon as his eyes in Egyptian religion, which are like a more accessible form of him. And then from that, there's a succession like you would see in a kingly succession. So you've got, the sun as the ruler, which transmits to the moon as the ruler when the sun is in the underworld. And then you also have, like the child, the solar child that comes up. So it's like passing a baton, and that also included the king as the recipient of that. Later on, it included the deceased being identified as Osiris. So you've got this kingly transmission of power coming from the great hidden God to you. So it's like picking up that mantle to have that power.
Yeah. And that's another thing that you see throughout the techniques, right? Which is really cool. This idea of a chain, right? And a flow, right? A direction of flow really through that chain, which is, I think, at least I straddle the line. I work Hellenistic stuff. Obviously a lot of the theurgic stuff, I have recourse to the PGM, right? It's like the only big collection of actual practical magic that we have from that era. So it's like, yeah, of course, I lean on that very heavily for my own reconstructions, but particularly, and Monte, you mentioned that you have experience in the Golden Dawn, but that sort of modern hermetic, quote unquote, Kabbalistic magic that relies on all of those hierarchies, that's a big part of my work too. And really, those sort of Kabbalistic hierarchies that we get from, Pico and Pseudo Dionysus, ultimately, right, they're laid out by Proclus and Iamblichus. So Iamblichus talks about angels and archangels, right? Messengers and ruling messengers. So I have no problem with using those two using that interchangeably, the angelic station in Hellenistic magic, because that's where the freaking word comes from.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I have students sometimes whenever we're doing rituals for Hermes, and I call him Angelos, the messenger, and they're like, "What?" And it's like you got to learn the language, man. You
yeah.
know. But yeah, and like self-identification with deity, I kind of view that as almost as like from the Golden Dawn background, stepping into the God forms. During ritual, when you create the God form, and then the station steps into the God form, it's basically the same thing, kind of on an astral level, rather than a personal level, I guess. But and also for one of the things was that the lecture that I gave for the Hermopolis was on Katohi, on divine possession. Of course, that's self-identification in its most extreme, which is something that does happen not frequently in our rituals, but it does happen from time to time. And that's, when all that energy aligns, you become the divinity. I think self-identifying, just what Alison said, is historically valid, absolutely, but also spiritually valid. I don't think that it's um, anything that is questionable with that at all.
Yeah. I think that's a good distinction to make too, the difference
Yeah.
between historical validity and spiritual validity. Yeah, and in the Golden Dawn, when we use the God forms and we step into them, it's sort of this attenuated identification, right? It's
Right.
like I am aware that I am there's still a part of me that is
Hmm.
is kind of in control of this operation. But in Katoke, yeah, it's you. I mean, some people call it that the God is riding you, and
Right. Yeah.
I've had that experience. A few times. I think the first time it happened, it was an intentional thing. I sat as a vehicle,
Hmm.
and I fought it because it's a very strange feeling. It's a
But it feels
very
like you're dying. Yeah, it feels like you're dying.
it does, and you don't know what's going to happen. And so,
Yeah.
really, what happened was I didn't totally give myself over the first time, and it was almost like I was looking through my eyes down a hallway through like the keyhole of a door.
Yep.
It was,
Yep.
and it was a very, very strange experience. But yeah, it's they're I think they in the phenomenological component, they're vastly different. Now, do you guys have any experience with that kind of possession personally? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do for sure.
So how do you was there a specific ritual purpose, let's say, Allison, that you underwent that, or did it just kind of happen and you had to figure that out, deal with it?
So my one of my mentors, Caroline Kenner, used to do these conjure dances at Sacred Space every year, which you and I will both be presenting at next year. She's moved to another coast and they don't do that anymore, but they were great. And one of the things we would do is we'd have these big spirit parties. So everybody would invite their spirits. We would have tables and tables of statues and offerings and things like that. We would have people singing. We'd have people drawing symbols to bring the spirits closer to us, and just all sorts of things like that. And then we would, in some cases, like for me, I would invite them into me so that we could party. Really, we dance around, have that fun experience. So it was more of a celebration to honor them than um, like a means to an end for practical magic.
That's really interesting. Yeah, inviting them into that experience. How about you, Monty?
Most of our rituals, um, we devote 1 month of the year to specific deity, going through the 12 Olympians. And so like right now is Hermes' month. Hermes is my patron, so I have a close connection to Hermes. Um, the possession, the first time that I experienced it was not on purpose. And like you said, I fought it. I fought it tooth and nail because I didn't know what was happening, you know. And like I said, I felt like I was dying. I was like, I'm going away, because you just get that tunnel, you know, like you said, that keyhole look, and you feel like you're falling back, and you don't know what the hell is going on. And I fought it, and then afterwards, I realized that I experienced it before I fully even knew that that was a thing in ancient religion. I live near New Orleans, and I lived in New Orleans for a long time, so I was familiar with it through the voodoo practices, and I have a lot of friends that were involved in voodoo, and I've never experienced a possession in a voodoo ceremony, but I've seen them, and so I was like, well, this is something different than what I'm practicing, because from at that point in my life, I didn't even know that that was a thing until I found Professor Shaw, Gregory Shaw's book on theurgy and the soul, and found the term Goetic. I didn't even know that that was a Goetic, that was a thing in Hellenism, or that the Greeks even had a term for that. And when I found that, I was like, well, shit, that's what that's what we've been doing. You know, that's been happening. And so we start doing it now where it's purposeful. Like you said, we choose someone who is attuned to that divinity. So for Hermes, it's usually me. And we put them in the center of the ceremony, and everybody does the Vocis Magica, or whatever we need to do, the songs, the music, the dancing, to raise that energy current, to call that current in. And then it just takes over, and Hermes will come through. And it's the importance for Iamblichus, the fact that his work survived, is one of the things that I'm most thankful for, because you can go back and you can look where he says these are the signs of genuine possession, you know, and you can see them happening. You know, the light in the temple getting brighter when the deity appears, and the difficulty in breathing, the whispers, and we had one instance. I have photos of a ritual we were doing where this mist started just coming out of the ground, you know, and he talks about those, the orbs of light, the different things, all those things happen exactly as he describes them. And I'm like, we're getting those things. So, but it is definitely something that we strive for. It's not something that is an occasional thing. Every ritual that we do is designed to try to make that happen, because that's the ultimate communion with divinity for us anyway. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting points there about theurgic appearance, you know, and the way they appear, and then the spirits which attend them, and the daimones that attend them on the different levels. You know, like the genegogic gods will look really great and powerful and terrible, and they'll have like these really intense kind of manifestations of material daimonas and things like that. And then the union with it is just it's something completely different. I mean, you're gone. You're gone.
Yeah. You're not there anymore.
No,
you know,
not at all.
There's no memory of it after. There's a lot of times where after that the ceremony is over, we'll sit down and they'll tell me things that, you know, was spoken to them, or things that were done that I have no recollection of at all. You know, none.
Yeah. We will do that usually with archangels at our temple, where we'll that was the purpose of the first time I sat, and everyone comes up and they get some sort of message, and I remember the first time, you know, they're like, "Why did you say this?" I'm like, I have no fucking clue. I didn't say anything. I was trapped in a closet somewhere looking through a keyhole.
You're asking the wrong person, man. I was way back here in the back of my skull. I don't know.
That's exactly what it felt like. Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like.
You're back here.
Yeah, I'm like trapped in my the occiput or something like that. So we've talked a little bit about, you know, this background of what we do, and the theory and where it comes from, and what I love talking about the phenomenology and the practice of it, because it's something a lot of people don't have the balls to talk about on a public forum. But before we get into some other topics, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the reasons for you guys, right, that you do this work? What are the benefits of specifically working with what we consider ancient practices in modernity? I mean, what do you think, Allison?
Yeah, so I've been testing every useful spell I can find for years. Some of my favorites right now and something I'm writing about are medical spells. So, spells for uh, sleep well and don't have nightmares, spells to relieve migraines instantly, spells to there's one that I like that's originally for curing a scorpion sting, but I've tested that it works on bee stings, jellyfish stings, ticks, tick bites. Like it'll make a bullseye rash disappear. Um, it's so these things are very effective, right? I was personally stung by a bee or wasp or something while gardening a few years ago, and before I even did any sort of other first aid for it, I did that spell. I wrote it down and I applied it to my sting, and then it immediately stopped hurting.
Wow.
So there's definitely immediate applications for these, especially the migraine spells like that puts people, I don't have migraines personally,
Mm.
but I know I have a lot of friends who have them, and that can be so debilitating.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this is, these spells are just so incredible that they work instantly.
Yeah, so making other people's lives better is pretty interesting, as an application of this stuff. Um, on first glance, when you don't know what you're looking at, you open up the PGM and some of these things look a little silly. Some of the
Mhm.
spells look a little silly, but I think the vertical and horizontal analogy works really well because even in, Monty, you mentioned Greg Shaw's work, particularly for Iamblichus. Yeah, you were on this journey of ascent, but the whole thing is that the point was to embody that and be in the world and make the world a better place. So really, they're two ends of a single spectrum, that kind of thing, and I can really appreciate, bringing that light for people, because another thing too is that a lot of ways, and I don't want to get too socio-political about this, but a lot of the ways in which a lot of the healing methods which are available to us are A, either extremely unaffordable, or B, they're not, there's some other like symptom that they create. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
I healed this one thing, but I plugged the hole in the ship over here, but now it's leaky on the other side.
And yeah, we don't need to say why that is, but we all know why that is.
Yeah, yeah. So what's your experience with the reasons and benefits of working with ancient practice and modernity, Monty?
I think it's in the same vein as exactly what Allison is saying. Is originally, um, if I'm going to be honest with myself and I'm going to be honest with everyone around me, my original purpose for wanting to get involved in it was to be powerful. That was the original young me, when I'm in my 16, 17-year-old phase and get interested in it, that was the reason. But as I got into the philosophical aspects of it, especially the Neoplatonic, and started discovering the reality of it and got involved in the Golden Dawn and learned the true purpose, I guess, of self-elevation, that was the draw, was to that Golden Dawn aspect of to become more than human. But then in the process of learning and practicing these things, I've watched it and teaching it to others, watched it get people out of toxic relationships, get them out of financial, ruin. It's gotten me out of two toxic relationships. It's got, relationships. Right before I did the monastic period, I was in probably the lowest point of my entire existence, relationship wise. I had got involved with a person who I tell students this a lot. This was the only person in my entire life that broke me as a human being. She just broke me. I was a shell of the person that I was before. And that was when I really decided I was going to delve into the Greek magical papyri. I said, I'm just going to get away from everyone. I don't want to be around anyone unless I absolutely have to. And I went monastic completely. And it saved me. It brought me out of it and lifted me into a position now where I'm with a person. I have two wonderful children. I don't think I've ever been happier. I wouldn't trade my life for anything. And I've seen it do that for other people as well. People, that alignment with divinity, that we talk about, that taking in and that absorption of divine energy, fixes things in a way that is difficult to describe, but things just start to fall into place, and Iamblichus talks about that, where the theurgist is no longer subject to fate because you're in line with divinity.
Yes.
And you move in the direction you need to move without necessarily having to do anything else, other than just maintain you. And it will affect your neighbors. It will affect the people around you. Everyone around you that becomes close to you partakes in that light, and they start to get better. And I can't even express it in words, but I think you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I've told the story many times. It was joining the Golden Dawn when I had no clue what magic really was, and just allowing the process to reveal itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I ever heard the word theurgy. Was been reading the
Yeah.
flying rolls of the Inner
Yep.
Order of the Golden Dawn. They're like, look, you don't need to come here to be a good person, but you come here to be wise, and that wisdom is
Mm-hmm.
applies to theurgy. Um, and those are foundational documents. But I was addicted to drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I was not living my best life. I felt trapped, and yeah, it did the same thing for me. I think a lot of people that maybe I knew 10 or 15 years ago would not recognize me.
Yeah. Same.
So
Absolutely same. Yeah.
there's absolutely that component to it where that is transformative, really, right? So I love the fact that you're talking about, bringing in what Iamblichus says about transcending fate. It's like because that's the whole idea behind the
Mm-hmm.
embodiment. It's not to float up into the stratosphere and gradually dissolve into stardust. It's this the whole idea of ascent is a way of analogizing what is happening to your consciousness when you are doing this sort of, when you are approximating or approaching the deity, and
Right.
there's different things that happen. And really what it's like is, if you've ever, at least from in my practice, the phenomenology of it can only be explained analogically, the way that you mentioned. It's very difficult to talk about. But when
Yeah.
when they send a rocket, you know, out into orbit, they put these two kind of thrusters on it to get it off of gravity, right, and out
Right.
of the atmosphere, and then but eventually those things they're not useful anymore, and so they fall away.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
there's this process of the persona sort of falling away or falling apart. I imagine it might be like what psychosis feels like,
Yeah.
for momentarily. You know?
Yeah. Well,
So
what's the famous occult saying is the only difference between a magician and an insane person is control. So
yeah, and you know what? Magicians don't always keep that control. So
no,
let's
they don't. It's a fine line between those two, man.
yeah. So what kind of techniques right now, uh uses of this stuff are you working with, like, currently, like this week? What are you excited about? Is it from the PGM? Is it something else? What are you guys interested in? Allison, why don't you start off?
Oh, well, lately I've been writing, so I've been testing more magic, especially medical spells. So I've been doing that for a couple years now. I got to the point where I realized I had already tested so many of them. I should just test a few more and turn it into a guide. So some of those involve uh, writing things on a leaf. Some of them involve speaking an invocation over oil, or like anointing someone with oil. I had a situation a few months ago where I was eating fish for dinner and I had a tiny bone stuck in my throat, and it was very annoying, and every time I swallowed it was poking me, but it was like about as thick as a whisker, and it was pretty far down there. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I tried to drink something, I tried to eat something, it was still there. And then I remembered that there was a PGM spell for that. So I did it and it worked immediately. Um, so I'm glad that I have this knowledge that I can put two and two together in the moment when I need that help, and say like, ah, yes, there's a resource for this.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of making a guide. I really think that's a really cool and really potentially, but most likely very useful to people like us. How about you, Monty? What are you working on right now or working with that is exciting?
I made the mistake of at the request of my oldest student who was around when I was finishing up my monastic period is when we met. I had just finished the 2 years and was getting back involved. And I took at that time and wrote a book about my experiences. And then I self-published it and quickly took it off the market because I realized that what we were talking about earlier was I didn't convey in words properly what was going on because it was just difficult for me to verbalize it. And that student and I had lost contact with each other for a while. Allison, that's the person that you're on there. What is it? Not Reddit. I am
Discord.
technologically illiterate. Yeah.
Discord, yeah. I
Yeah,
know
the
that.
Discord. Yeah. Yeah. He asked me if I was ever going to rewrite it. And I was like, I said, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that I can convey. And so I went to my storage unit and I pulled out all of my journals, which I have boxes from those 2 years of all my journals, my journal entries, things that happened, things I did, rituals that worked, rituals that didn't, all that stuff. And I've been going through it to rewrite the book, and I finally rewrote it. I got it out, but the journals I found so much stuff that I'm like, I forgot about this. So right now I'm working on kind of a lexicon of theurgic terminology to help newer people coming into the practice who are going to these original sources and maybe don't quite understand, like, say, what hyparxis means or what some of the terminology means, and give an explanation. So that's one of the things that I'm working on now. But ritually speaking, we're preparing for 2 more initiations. I have 2 students that are finishing up their studies in their neophyte phase. I actually, in the group that I have now, I still use the Golden Dawn titles for the grades because they're ingrained into my brain. So they're moving from neophyte to zealoter and moving forward from there. So that's going to be a focal point now, me preparing for those initiations. But going through the diaries and the journal entries has been, I'm glad I kept them, but they've created a whole lot more work for me now. So I've got a lot of stuff I want to work on now.
Yeah, they're extremely, extremely important.
Oh yeah.
The journals. Now, was that a habit that the Golden Dawn put you onto? Because I know that
Yeah.
it's a requirement. Yeah.
Yep. And all of my students do it, and I tell them all that if they're going to put stuff in there that's personal and private, they need to make sure, because I want to keep all of, like, some of the journals for their training they have to turn in, and I read through them to see if the experiences that they're having, or at least, have the signpost, like we used to say in Golden Dawn, of what they should be having. But they go into our group's archives, like that goes to the scribe, and the scribe archives them, and they're they're kept for future generations to be able to come back and say, you know, I had an experience, and then maybe they can go through these journals and find someone who had a similar experience and how they dealt with it or how they did it. Because the usefulness of those journals for me right now, things that are profound, that I'm kicking myself in the head, going, how did I forget about that experience?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was pretty damn profound. Like, why is that not etched into my damn brain? You know?
It's somewhere. It's somewhere in
Yeah,
the,
it's somewheres in there, but it got shadowed by something else. I don't know. It weirds me out because I'm like, got me second guessing myself. It's like, did I actually experience that I don't freaking remember it? Because I'm looking at the journal entry now, and when I read it, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that did happen.
and that's just one of the many,
Yeah.
many important reasons to keep your journals, and
Oh yeah.
and to not only to regularly write in them, but to hang on to them. I too have
Mhm.
I've got a shack, an outbuilding here that is basically my private oratory, and I've
Mhm.
got tin canisters that I have, you know, because some of the binding falls out and you've just got
Oh yeah.
paint. So I'm like sticking them in there. But it's interesting to me to hear about how you're kind of doing your own thing. I don't know much about that.
Mhm.
Is it something that you're attached to as an administrator? Is this something that exclusively sort of came out of,
It,
is this something you
it
made?
evolved. Yeah, it evolved. Originally, it started as basically a study group. When I left Golden Dawn, I was in Sedona, Arizona, studying. Moved back to Louisiana. I'm originally from Louisiana. I moved back to Louisiana, and I had been initiated into an Alexandrian coven, which no hate to anybody, but it didn't contribute much to my spiritual side at all. The Golden Dawn had a profound effect, but the big thing at that time was Wicca, and people wanted to learn. And so I was like, well, I'll start a study group. So I started a study group and kind of taught what I had learned. And we started doing some rituals and teaching people how to do rituals. And then that eventually evolved into a legally recognized church in this area, for protective purposes, which helped me in the long run because they ended up having to file a lawsuit against the parish here. They tried to shut me down based on some old fortune telling ordinance that I got the ACLU involved, and they had to repeal it from the books here, and so we're kind of safe here now because of that legal protection, at least for the time being. And so it kind of evolved into that. And then I went down that dark road that we talked about earlier with the bad relationship and kind of lost myself in the process. The group disbanded, and then I restarted it after the what I call the Manetho period, which was the seclusion, the 2-year seclusion. The first spirit that appeared to me doing a spell from the Greek magical papyri was what I believe to be an Egyptian spirit, named Manetho, and basically kind of guided me to where I am now. Kind of like, it's really difficult to put into words, but placed, I guess, I don't even know what to call it. It's almost like a download of information, I guess, of things that I had to piece together through the 2 years that I was doing, and still am piecing together now. I received during a Katoki of Hermes, an entire oracle for Hermes that I've been using for years now, but it's not complete. I still haven't figured out all of the stuff that was kind of put into my brain and put down on paper. That's some of the stuff I found in the journals, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about this. I gotta let me fix this, and let me go back to this, and let me start fine tuning stuff. So it evolved into its own tradition, which is basically a not a reconstruction of Hellenistic religion, but a recreation of it, in the vein with theurgy as kind of like the central road that goes through it.
Wonderful.
I guess that's the best way to put it.
That sounds great. So, I mean, as people who are like yourself that are doing, that are leading initiatory sort of trajectories and teaching people magic, and somebody like Allison who works at, she's got her company Practical Occult and
Mhm.
is working on guidebooks and helping people with medical stuff. What do we think? I mean, this is a little bit of a controversial thing in this age where magic is experiencing a sort of renaissance, but also in an age of what is increasingly becoming radical egalitarianism. Is
Mhm.
magic for everyone, or is it for only certain types? I mean, that's a tough question, and there's certainly nuance. But what are your first thoughts, Allison?
So historically speaking, in Egypt, magic was used by all walks of life, poor people, rich people, illiterate people. But the sort of texts that we see in the PGM were priests. Those were priests that also had private practices. And we believe this as a result of them being multilingual and complicated. That's not something that um, we believe that the average, day laborer in Egypt would have been able to decipher. Um, and, uh, I like to believe that magic is for everyone, but also it's something you have to work at. You have to work to make those connections and to strengthen them. You don't just, open up a book and so you can get results immediately with certain spells. Like all of the medical spells I'm going to have in this book are things that I've had people test when they have no experience with other magic. It's just, they're working on principles that are so solidified. It's just do this thing, say this thing, here we go. But then there's levels to it, and you can go deeper to it, and that's what I've really been working on for years, is the how deep can this go.
And a lot of that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but as you mentioned, there's a relationship component, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Between
So
you and the spirits or the deities that you're working with.
yeah, and also now I have good enough communication with them for years that I can just say, hey, what's going on with this spell? This is very confusing. Let's talk about it. Another thing I do a lot is I will create something from history, and then I'll kind of hold it up in the ritual and be like, what is this for? What should I have done differently? Does this need timing? Did this, you know, what was going on here? And sometimes the answer is, oh, historically speaking, that was just decorative.
I
I've,
think
I've, I've had that come up.
that technique is brilliant, actually. Yeah, just to have that availability and be like, this is confusing. Explain this to me. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
wouldn't think to even do
yes.
that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had so many sections of the PGM, and I'm like, okay, relevant deity, like what, explain this to me like I'm kindergartner.
Yeah. That's actually a great technique. Very cool. I mean, what do you think, Monty? Do you think that this is for everybody, or do you think that there are innate, let's say, qualities that one must possess?
I go back to Iamblichus again, where he stated that there's different types of theurgy depending on the type of person. I do think that magic can definitely be used by everyone because we're all innately divine based on the concept of the Neoplatonic concept, anyway, at least in my opinion, innately divine because of our connection to the one through the chain of being and through the chain of emanation. So it's possible for everyone, but um, I don't believe that everyone is capable. In line with what Allison said, it takes some work. I don't know if you've ever read the novel Zanani. It was mandatory reading in the lodge that I was in.
Yeah, Bulwer
Yeah,
Lytton. Mathers really
yeah.
had
When
a
when
fetish for
uh,
that
when
book.
Mesner says the first law of the universe is inequality, and that if we give the knowledge equally to everyone on the planet, tomorrow people will still wake up stupid, and some people will wake up the same, and some people will wake up smarter. It just depends on their ability to absorb that knowledge and that information. And I feel like that's kind of a good sum of what it is that it's not for everyone, but maybe not everyone is open to it, for it to be able to have the effect on them.
Mm,
And that all depends on their level of spirituality, uh, how their soul is aligned. If it's inotropic, if the soul is cluttered up with materiality and can't see the light, then it would take some changing on their part for them to be able to understand it,
mm.
and utilize it. But I do believe that it is for everyone, and I have had people that have come uh, to learn and just not get it. Just go, you know what? I tried. It's just not for me. And it's like, hey, that's cool.
Right.
Have a good time. And if you want to come back, if you feel like you need it later, we're here. And then some people come in and they struggle with it, and other people come and they soar with it. It just depends on the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. My thing is, and this is a clearly ableist analogy, but whatever, because this is
Yeah.
the only one I got. But it's like, I would say the majority of the people have two working legs. And so the question is, can you run? Yes, you're built to run. But the
Mhm.
thing is, will you run?
Right.
Will
Yeah.
you run? Like, and that's the whole thing. And so there's that determining factor, that innate quality is somebody that says, yes, I will, or no, I won't, or yeah, like you're saying, like I tried it, it sucks, it hurts, I don't want to do it anymore.
I, I can give you a good example of that. So, like with the PGM, people doing spells out of the PGM and people doing different ones. Do you want to know what's the first one I did? It's the first one in the PGM where you drown the rooster in the milk and drink it. I did that ritual.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I did that ritual exactly as it is portrayed in there. The only thing that I did was change from I made the orientation toward Helios,
Mhm.
because I couldn't get with the original. The falcon was a
Mhm.
difficult process, but a rooster was associated with Helios, and I can get a rooster because I was living in the middle of you know rural outside of Baton Rouge. I was in country, so I
Mhm.
could get roosters at the farmers market really easy, and I did that. It was the first ritual I did when I went into seclusion, and so.
Wow.
Not everyone would be willing to go to that extreme, but I was in a bad place at that time, and I was hungry to get better, and I went to the extreme. My metabolism from fasting during that period is still screwed up. I
Wow.
fasted to such an extent that my metabolism is still screwed up from that, and that was in 2008.
Wow.
So yeah, I still struggle with it. So I actually damaged myself, and I put warnings about that in the book. Like, don't do what I did,
Mhm.
because I give my journal entries, I give like my schedule, what I did, how I did it, the times I did things, I give all of it, and it can damage you. Like, don't go to the extreme. But
Yeah, and that's the trick, right? Because I
yeah,
have found in an administrative capacity of initiating and teaching and sort of building people up, but also in this capacity as an interviewer and as a conversationalist, um, magicians are usually extreme people in some way.
yeah,
There is an extreme element to us
yeah.
that makes us
We can
go this.
we can get intense. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
yeah, we can
Um,
get intense.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up the convo here. I think this was really excellent. It was fantastic to be able to talk about this kind of practice. The last couple of podcast interviews that I've done. I mean, I'm doing them all the time, but have been more scholarly, which is great too. But like, it's just the nitty gritty and talking about this stuff is really my bread and butter. So I thank you guys for being here and for sharing everything that you do. I'm going to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you've got going on. But first, you get the canned question. Could both of you please recommend 3 books? Allison, can you start?
Okay, so I actually have way more than 3. I had to break
Go
it
ahead.
down into, I had to break it down into working books and context books. So, the context books are more about the scholarly, try to understand what's going on behind the scenes. But for working books, I would say the Coffin Texts of 3 volumes by Faulkner, the Greek Magical Papyri, and Ancient Christian Magic, Coptic Texts of Ritual Power. They all have really great spells in there. And then if you're looking for something that's more bite size and easier to work with, I would say my guide, Secrets of Helios through Hadean Press, which is a single spell, or a wondrous spell, Necromancy in the PGM, which is also another Hadean guide by MHH, and it's another single PGM spell that's just broken down. And they're very short and will help you kind of get in there. And then for context, I do have Iamblichus on the Mysteries. I have Plutarch's Isis and Osiris from the Moralia, and Kneph, The Religion of Roman Thieves by David Klotz, which has really helped me understand the context of the PGM.
That sounds fantastic. I'm just curious. So you said you've been working with the coffin text. That's really interesting because they're funerary, right? So what kind of context have you been? I'm just curious. What kind of context have you been using those in?
So there's more than just funerary spells in there. But I have also used them for funerary purposes to elevate a friend who was in life, a Kemetic practitioner, and with the permission of their family.
That's great. So it sounds like really you are working in the tradition of the PGM in that when we look at the PGM, it's people who, I kind of agree, this priest class, this priestly sort of learned class that is using magic as a public service.
Yeah, I do definitely do community work, and local people know who I am and call me for things. So,
That's
definitely
great.
community magician.
That's awesome. Good on you, man. Monty, what do you got for us for reading?
I have to agree with Allison on the PGM. To me, in light of what we're talking about, I'm going to kind of keep it. The books I would recommend to help understand this particular conversation would be the PGM. Also, Theurgy and the Soul by Shaw was groundbreaking for me. He was able to put things in a context that made it more digestible for me. Which is also one of the reasons the lexicon got started in my notes, was because certain terms that I had come across in primary sources, I didn't quite understand what the hell they were talking about. And Shaw kind of helped me understand it in a way that I was like, oh, wait a minute. So now if I look at it this way, it's good. I think Philosophy as Initiation, as a form of initiation by Aldous, I can never pronounce his last name. Aldous,
Yeah.
it was Divinich, yeah. Philosophy as a Rite of Initiation is another one that was foundational. And of course the Iamblichus, but I think those 3 for a more modern reader who's not necessarily scholarly in their knowledge, I think Shaw rides a really good line in that you don't really have to be a scholar to understand. Even though he is a scholar, he writes it in a way that makes it understandable to people who are not scholarly. The Iamblichus is a heavy read, but absolutely necessary. And like you said, the PGM is kind of all over the place. But yeah, those would be mine. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll need something as a beginner to
Yeah,
show you how you're supposed to use the PGM because it's
yeah,
otherwise it's like I don't know, like napkin notes and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. It's a collection of things. It's not an encyclopedia that gives you, any order to it.
There's no instructions really, very
Yeah.
little. But great. So do you guys have anything that you want to plug? Websites or events or books or anything like that? Please feel free, Allison. You can start if you've got anything.
Yeah, just you can find my work at practicaloccult.com. I've got uh, a practical occult podcast. We have courses that my partner puts out. We have free resources like a huge blog. Um, Things that we sell like amulets. Inspired by and using magic from ancient times. But you can find everything I do at Practical Occult.
Awesome.
Um, I have a lot of books out. I don't even know how many at this particular point. I want to say it's close to 40. They're all available on Amazon. I have my own. The two latest ones, I think, in relation to what we're talking about here, would be Scrolls of Manetho. I have a hardback and a paperback edition available, which is my 2 year monastic experiment with the PGM and where it led me up to the ritual that was adapted from the PGM to help you commune with your diamond, to meet your diamond is where it culminates to. But it has all of my, like a lot of my journal entries and spells that I did and results that happened. I don't sugarcoat any of it. There's a lot of dark stuff in there. There's a lot of light stuff in there. It's a reflection of my life at the time. And then out of that one came the second one that I just finished, which kind of follows on the heels of Scrolls of Manetho, which is the Sacred Book of Power, which is taking the PGM spells and kind of making them adaptable for modern practitioners using things like dusting powders and the 7-day candles, and kind of because when I look at the PGM and I see, oh, here's a spell to regain a lost lover, I think of all the old spells I used to do back in the day, where it's like you get your come to me oil and you dress your candle and you do it. But so using some of those elements, because they did work for me, but in a PGM kind of paradigm. So, because some of the stuff, get a falcon's head. Where the hell am I going to find that? So you substitute the stuff that was available to them to the stuff that's available now, but you keep the spell basically the same. So that one kind of falls on the heels of that one. But I have a lot of them. I have taken some of the Platonic dialogues. I'm still working on that, but and converting them into a more modern speech. So that they're a little bit more understandable. I've got the Gorgias out and First Alcibiades out right now, and I'm working on some of the other ones right now. That'll be my retirement. That's going to take me forever, but that's the goal eventually. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff out. Everything's available on Amazon. You can just search my name on Amazon. It'll pull up a whole ton of stuff.
Great. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Really phenomenal conversation. I wish you guys the best in your work, and hopefully we can get on another either a roundtable podcast or have you guys back on
Anytime.
Severally.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, and let's keep that chat going too, because that's fun for
me.
me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, gang. Thanks.